Praise be Jesus and Mary. One of the things we always have to bear in mind, and this is one reason why we should beware of asking for special graces from the Lord, is because whenever there are special graces given to us, there is of course a greater obligation to correspond with those graces. We have a greater responsibility. We have more to answer for. It's one of the reasons you might say that the saints, especially when they realize that they're receiving God's favors, they try to tell him, Lord, I'm a sinner, kind of say, don't give me all these great graces because I won't use them properly. It's just more I'm going to have to answer for all of my wrongdoing, my negligence, my ingratitude, and the list goes on. And yet each of us, if we stop and think in our own lives, just if you want to even call them some of the ordinary graces that we receive from God, we have our own many things to answer for the gratitude that we should have for all the good things that He gives us, even sometimes for the suffering that we take and crumple up and throw in the wastebasket because we don't want it. All those are wasted graces, things that we have to consider. The feast that we celebrate today, Francis Solano, certainly he appreciated this. He shows that even in his death, he recognizes his great sinfulness, and yet when a brother would tell him, when you go to heaven, please remember me, and he acknowledged, he says, yes, I am destined to go to heaven, but not because of any merit on my part, but because of the merits of our Lord Jesus Christ. It's through His suffering, through His sacrifice. Certainly He strove to do His part. He strove to respond and make good use of the graces God had given him. In fact, actually, you can almost say he's an American saint. Not just a Franciscan saint, but an American saint, because he is one of the evangelists who would come over and proclaim Christ to the Indians. And he labored greatly in the work of the, catechizing and instructing the Indians for 12 years. In fact, one of the more astounding ones is a whole band of Indians had decided they were going to kill all the Europeans at one point, and they marching on the city, and they sent out Father Francis to go out and dissuade them, and he convinced, not only did they not carry out what they had intended, but 9,000 of them were baptized. That's the work of a saint, and God's grace, of course. This is what we need to strive, to pray for in our own times, that we would be worthy, cooperating with God's graces. And not always do we see such astounding conversions, especially when you have the difficulty to work through of, say, conversion of sinners who were Catholic at once and have turned away from their faith. This, of course, is the harder one to convert, because there's more to be forgiven. There's more graces that have been abused and not used properly. Plus, they've rejected the very source of the truth itself, because God has given them the truth, and they've taken and they've abused that. And they haven't cooperated with what they know and understand. That's why it's often easier sometimes to convert the pagan than the once upon a time Catholic or Christian, because they've oftentimes rejected certain principles that Christ teaches. And nevertheless, we shouldn't lose hope, but we need to pray and do penance for their conversion, as did Father Solanus, Francis Solanus. He prayed very much for the conversion of his brethren whom he was among at the time, whether it be Indian, of course, or wherever God had sent him to work. May Our Lady help us to continue this work of Father Solanus even in our own country, as we strive to more and more bring the word of Christ to all those among whom we live, by our examples, but our holiness of life, by our carefully chosen words without being nagging, that we too, like St. Francis, might continue his work to bring Christ and share Christ with our neighbor. Praise be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.